Well, this one. This is one of those episodes where it's just a goofy side quest kind of thing from an in-universe perspective. There's no big stakes. It's just Q felt like doing something silly. And even for a Q idiocy episode, this one is lowball. Because Q's explanation for why he's doing it is that he feels he owes a debt to Captain Picard and wants to settle the stakes. Um, okay. Well, this episode is one of those that also has something very interesting in it, though. We get to meet the Federation Archaeology Council. Yeah, we don't know exactly who all these people are. They kind of just show up to be seen on screen and then go away. They're not the focus of the episode, but the fact that they're here adds a lot of interesting depth to the um, setting because you're they when they did this, they introduced a plot device and something that they could, in theory, go back to in later episodes and reuse. Which, if you're doing a game master thing, hey, great way to just, let your players know that something is available as an option later on down the road, even if you don't necessarily intend to use it immediately. And also, when you take a close look at this picture, a lot of these outfits are blatantly reused uh, costume props. I mean, like Sovereign Maruk's sash, for example. This guy is dressed in Angosian uniform. Is this an Angosian? Given that Angosians are near human aliens, maybe there's no actual makeup used for Angosians. So, perhaps. Also, if you take a close look in this room, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight of the people in attendance are actually members of the Enterprise's crew. I don't remember why that is, but so not everyone in this picture is even one of the Federation Archaeology Council people. There's someone who's dressed like a Vulcan, some alien, a Bolian, and interesting group of people. Especially since, as I mentioned before, we have reason to believe that some of these are actually near human aliens and not actually humans. Oh yeah. Also, there's apparently an Algolian too. Oh yeah, that guy with the one with the face and the cranial ridge. Mm, this is actually one of those things that's like a alien that gets used as a recurring background plot point. So you throw a weird alien in there to remind people that aliens are a thing in Star Trek and that it's not just humans doing stuff, even though obviously, Star Trek likes to do the whole near human alien things as a way to save on budgets for live action because alien makeup like this is really, really expensive to actually do in film. And thus, they only do it for a few scenes. Like this guy shows up in the opening scene of the episode and never seen again. Like I said, this is literally all we know about the guy. He was one of the Federation Archaeology Council members who attended the symposium. And that's it. However, if you're playing a TTRPG version of this, you don't have a reason to be so conservative when it comes to making weird aliens. You can go full bore on it. And honestly, that was actually something that Gene Roddenberry himself talked about as something that he liked about making the animated series is that having animators draw the characters removes that constraint. You don't need to have near human aliens as the alien of the week. You can just have people draw whatever, which is why we got bird people, three armed people, cat people as well. I mean, Imres was one of the members of the Enterprise's bridge crew in the animated series. Anyway, though, that's a bit of a side tangent, but yeah, have fun with weird aliens when you're doing uh, TTRPGs based on Star Trek. That's actually like I said, is that the number one reason so many of the characters in Star Trek are either humans or near human aliens is solely due to budget reasons. You can throw in whatever the heck you want to that makes sense from the perspective of it being a Federation race. Anyways, though, moving on to this episode. Like I said before, this one is a Q stupidity episode. And thus, Q is taking a fictionalized version of something that's based on historical events and forcing the crew to uh, live out it. Heck, even force Patrick Stewart to have hair. My goodness, the fiend. Side note, evil versions of Picard don't end up getting the goatee of evil, just this version. Kind of odd, but it is what it is. And of course, we have the character Vash, who this is the second and third of three appearances for the Vash character, because while this is a character that we see more than once, and that it is a character whose appearances are all directly connected to each other, and it isn't just someone who just shows up at random. None of the appearances of Vash is actually a lasting impact. Kind of an odd thing. Because this one, Vash decides she'd rather hang out with Q than Picard, and decides, no, you know what? I'm just not going to have a relationship with Picard. I'm done with that. No, no, no. Never mind. Bye. It's one of those things I'm like, what? From a story writing perspective, I kind of felt that they had decided that they didn't want to have Vash pursue an actual relationship with Picard because having the Vash character actually show up as a regular was something they didn't want to do. So they just kind of wrote her out of the story. Anyways, if you're doing a TTRPG, make your own choices. Don't feel the need to conform to the way that the people who wrote the TV show did. You're using the setting, not following the exact rules used to write the setting. Anyways, oh yeah, I'm gonna use this as a thumbnail. So other interesting things about this episode. Picard's crew doesn't know who Vash is, so a lot of stuff in the episode is Picard's crew meeting Vash because Vash has never been on board the Enterprise before. The previous episode with Vash was solely on Risa. Yeah, it was the one where Picard is on Risa with the time traveling people. And like I said before, Q is doing this because he feels um, grateful to Picard for Picard's actions in the Deja Q episode, which is equally an actually a much more interesting episode to look at in terms of implications, because the way Deja Q is written leaves certain aspects of the story ambiguous that would be great to tinker with if you're doing something based on that one. This is one where it's just kind of like have one of the Qs show up to make the players do stuff, which, you know what, it's certainly a workable idea. Having Data as Friar Tuck is kind of amusing, though. I'm really kind of curious if this is supposed to be a bald cap or not, because it really looks more like a leather hat than a bald cap. Kind of strange. And of course, all of the roles in the story, the Q basically tells the various members of the cast that they have to act out their roles in the story. Not that all of them actually know the story. I mean, because let's face it, we have people like Worf, who I mean, he grew up on Earth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he knows everything. And several other characters who, it's the future. While this was a popular story, it's not necessarily something that people in the future are going to be universally familiar with. Unless, of course, in the future people decide to use it as a metaphor for why monetary systems are bad and why they should have a currency-less economy. Thus, you don't have issues like economic poverty, where uh, one group of people is less affluent than another, which the Federation arguably doesn't actually do that. Oh, I talked about that in other episodes a few times. That is actually a very interesting point, though, is that in the Next Generation and the various holodeck stories, they kind of sort of say that certain of the historical stories got used by holodeck writers so that they could sell holodeck programs, or assuming that sell is even the right word for what they're doing with the holodeck programs. But they take make these holo novels that for players to act out based on various traditional stories. Well, that could be the reason why the various members of the crew actually have familiarity with this. Then again, being the whole Q thing, Q can actually just kind of sort of do the equivalent of telepathically downloading the information into people's heads. It's not really all that clear why everyone suddenly knows what this story is, or even if it is them suddenly knowing. Oh well. Mm, yeah. To be also this whole thing with the Tagwan ruins. That is something that's kind of sort of like barely talked about. Boy. Yeah. Thing is, let's take a quick look at this because, like, this is actually something that comes up as a major plot point, and the reason for the archaeology council meeting is that the population of Tagus has some ruins from civilizations that are truly ancient, supposedly 2 billion years old, and that people have been doing archaeological examinations of this for centuries. There's been 947 archaeological expeditions that have been conducted, with 74 of them revealing findings of major importance. And oh, this has been actually going on for 22,000 years. Vulcans, American Continent Institute, University of Alpha Centauri, University of Hawaii, University of Beta Sit, Memory Alpha Cultural Institution, and whatever the heck this is pronounced as. And of course, these are probably just in jokes. I don't think I'm going to get anything from clicking on them. And of course, the Taguans decided that this is a cultural treasure, and we have decided that we no longer want to have people just, wandering around and poking at everything. See, here's the thing. This map here is literally the only thing players get to see. If you were to tinker with this, you could actually have your players try exploring it. Problem with that. This is all we know about the Taguans, which, on the one hand, it means you basically can make up crap. However, there is, of course, an interesting question about whether or not the well, we don't know the nature of Taguan civilization. So making stuff up means you need to ex- consider the idea of Taguan civilization. Mm, 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 mm. Also, due to the extreme age of the ruins, the nature of these periods is highly, I don't know. Dun dun dun. Yeah. But this is basically just a thing of like, hey, someone found a thing, and that's all. Wait, what is this one? Uh, can't quite make that one out. That sounds interesting though. This is just barely blurry enough that I can't read everything. Ooh, religious structure analysis, University of Beta Z. That sounds like fun. That is actually an interesting thing. Having your team that is doing your thing actually accept Q's offer to go to um, Tagua and actually look at the ruins in the past, like what he'd offered to Picard, would have is something that you could genuinely do as an interesting TTRPG module, because that's actually a choice in this episode. It- They don't get into the Q stupidity until relatively late in the episode. Early in the episode, the focus is actually on the archaeology stuff and discussing archaeology and what that means for Tagus and the Taguan people. And, so if you're doing this in a TTRPG and you have Q present that choice, be ready to see what happens if the players be ready for both options. Okay. Be ready for players to say yes and be ready for players to say no, because you will find a lot of players who would rather do an archaeological expedition to Tagua in the past. Mm. Now, this is another interesting thing is that Picard or says, "Oh, love is dangerous, and I could get rid of Vash for you." Yeah, interesting. Anyway, though, so it's not until the end of Act Two that Q dumps people into his fantasy world. And then you have all of the crew be forced to live stuff out. And then when everything's done, like I said before, Vash leaves and goes to play with you. Now, doing this in TTRPG module, Vash would obviously be a important NPC. And with all of the members of the crew, to include Picard in this case, being more or less stand ins for player characters, because this is one of those episodes where everyone that actually appears in the episode is reacting to the events of the episode. It's not something that is drastically separated from the others. And that is a good thing to focus on in the episodes. Like, this isn't an episode where it's centered on one specific character to a great extent. Picard and Vash are obviously the two primary characters, but everyone else does a lot of stuff in this episode too. Yes, Picard gets more attention than the others, but it's not. It, it's a loosely character focused episode, not an intensely character focused episode, and not so character focused that the main character is the star of the show, so to speak. That is taken up by Q and Vash. Picard's just along for the ride, uh, although he does more talking than the other people. Anyway, enough about that. So yeah, writing this in TTRPG. It's just an excuse for your players to do stuff. Like, because Q is involved, you can do all sorts of random nonsense that otherwise would be hard to justify. Like going to see what Tagua looks like in the past. Like I said before, the idea of doing a Robin Hood reenactment as Star Trek characters is interesting in the episode as aired because of the fact that it's the viewers watching the characters in the TV show be uncomfortable about acting out roles that aren't their own. However, players in a TTRPG would be like, oh, we're doing a different genre of TTRPG today, I take it. Okay, then. And the novelty is much less great because of the fact that the players don't have the same emotional reaction that you would characters in a TV show. And thus, it doesn't hit the same notes that you would get from having it shown in the TV show. Especially when you have players that have actually done different GTRPGs that actually have a medieval setting. Like, oh, we're doing this today. Whatever. Doing the whole like excavation of Tagua thing. Like I said, some TTRPG groups wouldn't be into that. Some of them would. And I can't really say that either one of them actually sounds inherently better to me. Both of them have their strong points. Also, doing a Star Trek Adventures group and having them actually properly equipped for a Sherwood Forest romp would actually be considerably more technically challenging because of the fact that you probably aren't going to have them using phasers to fight King John's men. Yeah, that's a thing. Anyways, that's enough about that. There's a lot of thinking to do with this one, and honestly, a lot of what you would do is just like what we kind of want to do more. Anyways, I hope this gave you guys fun food for thought. See you later.